Y'all come in and sit down. We gotta talk. They are saying Diddy is about to go broke. Now, let's talk about it, y'all. Diddy thought he dodged the big one. No Smex trafficking conviction, no Rico convent conviction, just about two men at conventions. And this man thought he was just going tiptoe out the door with some bail. Now listen, Judge Aaron told him to sit down before he sits them down. But y'all, let's actually talk about how Diddy forgot one thing, the civil cases. And now Jane Doe, the ISIS courts, and every person who's ever got flown out under pressure just got a legal cheat code and they're coming straight for his money. Y'all, let's get into this because all I gotta say is, baby, we love to see it. Now, first of all, I want everybody on the internet to understand what Diddy was actually convicted of and why it's a civil lawsuit, Gold Marine. All right, so let's get into it because this part matters more than people and the duty supporters realize. A
Present,
lot of it
and
folks
no
heard man
longer has a
acted, thought it was
voice who
some
will
dusty
pursue
technical
justice
law.
for her
Now, I'm
accusation.
not gonna lie, it is dope. It
As
is
of the
rooted
taken
in
against
racism,
Diddy,
white slavery.
no
However,
expansion
over
of the
years,
investigation,
over the years,
no
it
isolation
evolved and is
orders,
one now the most
no
powerful
equipment
tools that
access,
prosecutors
no
use in
suspension
Smex
of attorney
trafficking. All
communication.
right, y'all got that. Now let's get into this. All right, so the Mann Act now is a federal Mex crime statute, and baby, it has teeth. It carries prison time up to 20 years, and if you plead guilty or you're convicted, that stays on your record for life. Now, baby, Diddy was convicted, so what exactly was Diddy convicted of? Under U.S. Code 2421, the Mann Act makes it a federal felony to knowingly transport a person across state lines for the purposes of illegal SMEWA activity, whether that's prostitutes or coercive SMEWA arrangements that violate state or federal D law. Now, let's break this down legally because I need for people in the back to hear this. Knowingly means it wasn't accidental. You booked the flights, you arranged the hotel, you knew what was going to happen. For illegal SMEWA activity includes SMEX under coercion, fraud, drugs, manipulation, or exploitation, not just formal prostitution. And crossing state lines turns it into a federal offense, not just a local scandal. And that's exactly what federal prosecutors allege that he did multiple times over multiple years to multiple women and the escorts. So even if the charges were sealed, okay, and even if he didn't serve time, which they are not sealed, and he is going to serve time. A conviction or guilty plea under the Mann Act means the federal government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he uses power, wealth, and transportation access to commit SMEX trials, sex crimes. Maybe let that sit in. No, literally let it. Okay, now here's why the conviction is a civil lawsuit jackpot. It removes the burden of proof for future plaintiffs. That's right. Jane Doe and the escorts don't need to prove that Diddy intended to exploit them across state lines. All they have to do is show up and say, Yana, here's his federal conviction. He's already been found guilty of doing this exact thing. They don't need him to be convicted of SMEX trafficking. They only need to show by a preponderance of the evidence that it's more likely than not that he harmed them. A Mann Act conviction is like a neon sign for the judge saying this man has done this before. This isn't theoretical. The Mann Act makes him legally vulnerable even without jail time. Because let's be clear, Diddy may be able to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but legally, he's now a convicted SMX offender under federal law. That's admissible, that's powerful. And in a civil court, baby, that's money. The survivors don't need to prove consent was absent. They don't need to prove, oh, I didn't consent, I didn't want it. They don't have to sit up in front of those juries and listen to them watch all their horrors and being like, nah, you wanted. The law has already said it didn't matter because under the Mann Act, consent isn't valid if the sexual activity involved fraud, manipulation, or abuse of power. So when people say, well, they agreed to go, the court has already decided the agreement was not legally valid. You cannot legally agree to let somebody exploit you like that. Now, here's the translation for the timeline and the people in the back. Diddy just didn't take a PR hit, y'all. He was legally branded as someone who exploits women using power, travel, and coercion. Even if he never wears an orange jumpsuit, and he will, even the best estimate Mark Gargos has him as a year, his money is now on the table and the bill is coming due. But y'all, let's also focus on the civil fallout. How this one. Well, actually, these two convictions opened the lawsuit floodgates. Diddy's Mann convention didn't close that chapter. It cracked the safe open because now, well, actually, yeah. Now that Diddy's been formally convicted of a federal sex crime, what's that mean? Take a guess. Every person who has ever been flown out, locked down, coerced, rugged, assaulted, manipulated, or just controlled by this man in a spectral context, baby, they have legal ammo. Who are we talking about? Jane Doe, the escorts, any background dancers, industry girlfriends, paid for plus ones. I'm just saying. And did he pay for their time, not their body? And the ones who were told this is how it works, get used to it. And anyone who had to play alone to survive. Now, thanks to collateral estoppel, a legal term, Diddy can't just show up in court and say, I didn't do that, because the federal government already said yes. Yes, yes, you did. In fact, do that. The Mann Act conviction means every survivor's legal team gets to skip step one. They don't have to prove if he's guilty. They get to focus on how he owes. And baby, of course, this is about
Present,
money, not
and no
prison.
longer
But
has a
again,
voice who will
don't
pursue
let people
justice
screw
for
you
her
with the
accusation.
okay? Don't let people
As of
screw
the
you
Aiken
with the
against Diddy,
okay of oh no.
no
Why
expansion
are
of the
you doing
investigation,
civil? You just
no
want
isolation
money. Hell
orders,
yeah.
no
Run that
equipment
fool's pockets up,
access,
because
no
without that
suspension
money,
of attorney
these people wouldn't
communication.
be on their hands and knees begging for pennies doing his evil work. All right? This is about money, not prison. The criminal court gave us the label. The civil court is going to send the invoice. Under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the related civil statutes, these survivors can now sue for pain and suffering, psychological trauma, emotional distress, loss of income, punitive damage, attorney's fees, and lifetime therapy costs. And those numbers add up fast. If one woman wins a $5 million judgment, that sets a precedence for the next and the next and the next. And this is how predators lose everything after the verdict. Diddy is now one mistake away from losing it all forever. And baby, we love to see it and hear, because you guys, I don't care. Listen, this is a point of discourse, but even a fool can see that right now. And by fools, I mean everybody but his supporters outside can see that. Now that there's a federal conviction on record, Diddy can never afford another mistake. If another Jane comes forward tomorrow, if he loses his temper in a hotel suite, if a party gets filmed, if a former assistant comes clean, or if an escort feels emboldened, baby Diddy is done. Because that one new lawsuit, that lawyer just walks in with the Mann Act paperwork and says, look at the pattern. He did this before. He's doing it again. The judge doesn't need a full trial. The judge doesn't need to guess. They already know who he is. And this time he can't claim innocence. He already signed that away. Baby, this is the final word on this fallout. Day 5 of the Diddy trial. Diddy trial verdict. Fallout. I guess. Diddy thought that literally only being convicted of those 2 counts could save his empire. But what he really did was hand every survivor the legal weapon they were missing. He thought it was over, but the truth is that signature under the Mann Act just made it open season for his life. Again, I want you guys to know he pleaded guilty on 2 counts. And it's not even what he pleaded guilty for, it's what he admitted on the record. Mark Agnapilio admitted he was very violent, admitted he did all those horrible things. That's why he got denied bail. Everything he admitted in that court can be used in a civil suit. Baby, again, the Mann Act blew the door open. And get this, the feds might not be done. The Mann Act wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a wedge, a crack in the dam. And now the water is rushing in civilly and perhaps even criminally. Let's be clear. When the federal court convicts you under the Mann Act, you don't just lose reputation, you lose protection. How? Well, how about this? First, the civil floodgates are wide open. Every woman who thought, well, I can't sue, no one would believe me, now has something powerful in their corner. A federal conviction confirming this man used SMMA to his power and interstate travel to exploit women. This is the legal equivalent of blood in the water, and that sharks are circling with lawsuits, lawyers, and trauma timelines. And the Trafficking Victims Protecting Act, that's a TV, which works hand in hand with the Mann Act, gives survivors up to 10 years from the date of discovery to file civil claims for coerce, drug fuel, manipulation, emotional and psychological abuse, commercial exploitation, and anything tied to a pattern of grooming and trafficking. And the best part is, they don't need a new conviction. They just need to say, this happened to me too, and it matches what he's already been convicted of. This is copy and paste civil court goal. But here's the cold truth. He's not safe criminally either. And this is the one thing these Diddy supporters don't want to admit. Diddy thinks this man at conviction was the end of it, a sealed deal, a quiet close. But that's not how feds play the long game. Let's look at the R. Kelly blueprint. First case, acquitted. Second, mistrial. Third, media circus, no charges. Fourth swing, boom, federal trafficking conviction. Decades behind bars. The DOJ took 4 tries to build a perfect
Present,
criminal case.
and no
when
longer
they
has a
hit,
voice who will
baby,
pursue
they
justice
hit
for her
hard.
accusation.
Same with Epstein, same with
As of the
Weinstein.
Aiken against
Pattern
Diddy,
cases take time.
no
And
expansion
now
of the
Mann Act
investigation,
conviction,
no
the two of
isolation
them,
orders,
has done 2
no
dangerous
equipment
things for
access,
Diddy. It
no
preserved
suspension of
criminal
attorney
liability,
communication.
because if any new victim steps forward with a fresh federal violation, or if any past violations falls within the statute of limitations, the feds can reopen an investigation with and file new charges. And this time they bring the pattern. And they might still get the RICO. Now I know what you're saying. Double jeopardy. They can never try him for RICO again. Yes, for the trafficking of Cassie and Jane, but for anybody else, still open season. So again, like I said, let's just say, did he lose his temper again, like he allegedly did with Jane? Let's say the former employee hands over those rumored videos. Let's say someone flips a driver, a manager, a fix. If one more credible case lands on a prosecutor's desk, Diddy is not just writing checks, he's doing time. Diddy is in a holding pattern, y'all. One step from collapse. Now, right now, again, this is dangerous. Legal limbo. The feds have enough to expose him. The civil suits are lining up to bankrupt him. One more misstep and he is R. Kelly. He doesn't even have to assault anyone new. If a case from 2016-17 surfaces and falls within the 10-year window, he could be charged under the same law. He just literally got convicted, but this time it's going to be worse. And because he's already a convicted SMEX offender, the next jury won't be asking if, they'll be asking how many years. Baby Diddy tried to close the door with a sealed deal, but what he really did was leave it unlocked and light a fire on the way out. Civilly, he's vulnerable. Criminally, he's on probation without papers. Financially, the invoices are coming. Baby, one misstep, one more Jane, one more temper tantrum. And the government that let him slide this, I'm sorry, not the government, the jury that let him slide this time, baby. They will swing again. And next time, they're saying they might not miss. Woo, baby, this is some heavy stuff. What do y'all think about this? Because at the end of the day, Jane's case is just a start. Jane Doe may potentially file suit again. If she did, it would outline rugging, rape, psychological control, and exploitation across multiple states, the exact blueprint for the Mann Act charge. And because Diddy has already pled guilty to similar behavior, her legal team has momentum. But what happens when the escorts file? What happens when a second Jane Doe, if they exist, steps forward, or a third or a fourth or a fifth? If even one wins a multi-million-dollar verdict, the rest will follow. This isn't a gossip headline anymore. It's mass tort territory. You guys keep this in mind, okay? And I want everybody to know this. And just keep hope alive because the universe always bends to the arc of truth. Okay, again, keep it in mind. Let's end this with a little hope and a little heat because if you've been watching this and thinking, where's the justice? Baby, you're not alone. Diddy is. I don't think justice was served yet. There's whispers of charges in California, maybe New York, maybe federal RICO, and maybe they'll file, or maybe they won't. But I'm gonna tell you what I do know and what I do think. Justice doesn't always come in a form of a courtroom. Sometimes it shows up in a mirror. And Diddy is a man who survived off control, intimidation, manipulation for over 2 decades. That's not just strategy, that's identity. And now that identity is under threat, Diddy is no longer in control. He's being watched, he's being whispered about, he's being laughed at, he's being outed in court records, sealed deals, and public opinion. And a man like Diddy, baby, he doesn't collapse quietly. And lastly, that brings us to the real danger, Diddy's own nature. See, the most dangerous thing about Diddy isn't what's been proven, it's what he still believes he can get away with. And that's why whether or not charges are ever filed again, he's gonna make a mistake. Because Diddy can't help, but Diddy, he can't stand being humiliated. He can't sit still. He can't stop asserting power even when the world is saying so. When you ask where justice is, it might not be in a jury verdict. It might not come from the FBI. And it might not come from California or New York. It might come from Diddy's own hand. From the one bad night where he can't contain himself. From the next Jane he underestimates. From the next phone he gets
Present,
to destroy.
and no longer
From
has a
fixer
voice who
who's
will
had
pursue
enough, or
justice
from
for
the
her
escorts that have
accusation.
jet lag and they're mad he
As of the
flew them
taken
out on
against Diddy,
Southwest Spirit Airlines.
no
Baby, a
expansion of the
reckoning is coming,
investigation,
and it's
no
bigger than the
isolation
courtroom.
orders,
This is bigger
no
than
equipment
one trial.
access,
This is
no
about
suspension
power.
of attorney
This is about
communication.
silence. This is about what happens when you spend 20 years playing God and thinking the world won't bite you back. So for every survivor, every viewer, every person who felt like they were losing hope, don't, because justice isn't always loud, but it is patient, and it doesn't need a press release to hit. Sometimes the biggest fall comes not when the system stops you, but when your own ego drives you into the fire. And baby, Diddy is already holding that match. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think in the comments. I will talk to y'all later.